Hey there, we're back. My name is Seth Juarez. We're at the Washington State Convention Center for the 2017 edition of Build. And there was a really exciting announcement for someone like me who's a dev that came up, and I wanted to have you on. So why don't we do this? Let's introduce, why don't you introduce yourselves, tell us who you are and what you do, and we'll talk a little bit about design, something I'm horrible at. So let's start with here.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Seth. Thanks for having me here. I'm Albert Shum. I lead the design of Windows Devices Group.
My name is Paul Gusmarino, and I work on the developer platform of Windows.
Okay.
My name is Bojana Ostojic. I'm a principal director of design in Windows organization working in Albert.
Fantastic. So Microsoft Fluent Design System. We'll start off for why was there a need, and then we'll get into some of the principles that will help me finally make applications that look and feel good. Why don't you tell us a little about?
Yeah, it's definitely been a journey, and we're so excited to be able to share it. I feel like we've been working on Fluent Design for the last couple of years, and I think the spark of that was, when we started working on things like mixed reality with HoloLens, at the same time when you have more inputs like ink and touch, and still keyboard and mouse, how do we start creating designs that actually works? I think our job is to make it easier for end users to be able to use our products, use our apps, our services, and that was really the genesis of just trying to bring that all together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you come from the engineering side, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about design from that perspective. What does it mean to you, and why is it important in this age of now we have devices that span keyboard and mouse all the way to headless devices like your car?
Yeah. Well, I think for us, one of the big things we think about is enabling developers to be creative and enabling them to use all the capabilities that all these devices now have in a really systematic and easy way. Because I think you can always go and write code. You can always go make a video game and create your own game engine and create everything yourself from scratch. But that's not really feasible for developers at scale to do.
Oh.
And so we think a lot about how do we create a system that makes it really at scale for everyone to harness and take advantage of all these cool technologies in a really simple and systematic way, so they can just get these amazing, professional feeling, transformative apps.
So let's talk a little bit about the principles, because you mentioned that there was 5 principles. And usually as a programmer, when I'm thinking, I can see something and I'm like, oh, that looks good, but I can never go to it. I feel like there's this weird 40-year journey of me never getting there. So tell us about the principles of design that I should think about.
Well, one thing I was going to add, which
Please.
will kind of tee it up, the other thing that's behind the why is that we know that users are starting to expect much richer and immersive applications and experiences. So something that was reserved for gaming in the past, now they want to see in the productivity and creativity space as well. So if you think that's a starting point in terms of how do we want these applications and experiences to feel, that richness and immersion and kind of a sensory experience leads us straight to the 5 building blocks, these principles. So we talk about light, we talk about depth, we talk about material, motion, and scale.
And and we'll go to each one of these and talk about it, but as I was watching the UI during the keynote, it almost felt like you were trying to make the computer slip away, because generally we had to adapt to computers before, and now it feels like this adapts to people better.
Yeah, and I think that's a core part of when we talk about scale. How do you, because you're the one that's kind of mobile. It's not the phone that's mobile, right?
Yeah.
You're working on a phone, you're working on a PC, or even working on Service Hub. How do you kind of adapt in all those different contexts? And I think the most important job for design and hopefully for all of us is that making things easy to use. It's not about just designing less stuff. It's actually, we have really dense apps, we have a lot of hierarchy. How do you create those things that makes it easy to create affordance, discoverability? To me, design, it's not just about how things look, it's how does it feel and how does it work. So
yeah, go ahead.
I'll add one thing, which is opening our eyes to the holographic space kind of taught us a little bit to investigate how could we solve some of the old problems that we experience in today's devices through that new lens. Because we started experiencing design and the paradigm of interaction in a way different of a way. And so how do we bring some of those learnings to the existing problems? Can we find some new ways in solving old problems in new ways?
And I love how you brought up that, and because I make this mistake all the time as a developer, design is not just about making things look good. It's about making things work well for the human. Right?
Yeah, totally. And even a simple thing as a calculator app. It's like, oh, we've had calculator apps forever. I think Paul does a really good job of showing as a developer how you could bring light into our system to actually make it easier for people to use, but also draws you in, and as simple as a calculator app. I mean,
yeah, like I think one of the things developers struggle with a lot is when you're trying to create an app, you're trying to balance power and simplicity.
Right.
People always want more and more power in their apps. So they're trying to get stuff done. That, especially a lot of Microsoft developers are building really sophisticated apps. There's a lot of enterprise and business apps. And at the same time, people want apps to feel simple. And sometimes what people end up doing is, oh, how can we get rid of lines or hide UI or make things kind of invisible? And then becomes harder to use.
Discoverability, yeah.
And so I think what's awesome about what we're doing with Fluent Design and things like light and material is it allows you to create a UI that has that simple, natural feeling, so it adapts to how humans think and how humans work and how they expect the world to be, and yet also has that power. And so all the functions of that calculator app are there, but they're presented in a way that just feels natural and intuitive for a person, so you can balance that power and that simplicity at the same time.
Yeah, it feels like there's this really huge tug of war. It's like, I'll just put another button or another menu that no one's ever going to find, right?
Yeah, and I think that's it's not the design. Like, I think that's what I'm trying to make sure it's not like, it's not about someone's job. It is to make design happen. We're all designing. Anything you create is design.
Right.
And it gets experienced by someone. So how do you make sure that, one, we can make a system that makes it easy for you to create your experience.
Right.
And then ultimately make sure it's a gridded experience. That's the key to a good design system.
All right, so some questions coming in already. The first one that I probably would have asked before I started reading things, I'm like, oh, I should really think about this. Scott, I'm an enterprise developer. Why should I care about design? It's just a bunch of labels and text boxes, right? What do you say?
Well, we just kind of started that conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's beyond just what things look like. We certainly want to understand the problem up front so we know what we're solving for. So if that's a beginning, then just the crafting of that experience from a problem statement, it's probably the most important part before we even get to anything looking a certain way.
And even if it's just a form, you think about going through a form of text boxes, there's a lot to how you arrange that form, how you interact with the things in that form, how you can be efficient filling it out. And so there's features that we've shown, like with the pen handwriting into text boxes, for example, that make that much more effortless and natural. So if you're quickly, depends how are you using that form. How are even if it's a simple form, you can think about how is someone going to be filling out that form? Are they on a show floor with a tablet, walking around using it? And then do they want to type into a little touch keyboard, or is it easier for them to write into that form, for example? And so there's a lot that you can think about, even if it's just simple things like a form. The most basic thing a lot of developers create. There's a lot you can bring to that, with design to make it really great for people to use and efficient.
Yeah, and also we're thinking a lot more beyond just like Bo was saying, just the visual. That even like voice, like we're talking, we're gesturing.
Where's the text box there?
There, right.
Yeah.
And how do I look at, the words bubble comes out like over my head.
Where does that go?
So how do we make interaction that's beyond screens even? And I think that's really part of our design system and breaking out of the text box with ink.
Understanding users' context and intent and posture and mode of interaction, those are all considerations of design, not just what something looks like.
From Lance, user experience is really hard to sell. Customers don't really see the benefit. How can this new design system help me sell it to my customers? They don't want to pay for the extra work.
I feel like, I always love showing before and after. It's kind of like extreme makeover of a house. like you really see, like, regardless of you say like, hey, don't want to pay for it. The benefit, it's really about the end user. You either make things work better or more efficient. I think that's a key to a good design system. I think the other part is people do feel the difference.
Yes.
And it's like I said, sometimes like you're not a designer, but you know it when you see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when you start using it, it feels like it's fluid, it's seamless, and it just makes you want to use it. And that's the most important thing. We want to get people to engage, to want you to use your product.
From a programmer perspective, in my opinion, now that I've learned a little bit more, I feel like bad design is part of our technical debt. Like
Sure,
if you use the wrong ORM or if you wrote code bad, that's technical debt. All programmers know where our technical debt is, okay? I'm looking at you. I feel like bad design should be considered part of technical debt of your application.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely do in terms of
Like
our
performance
there's something
or
interesting about not, my customers don't care about user experience. Like something's amiss.
Yeah.
Like it's experience of something. How do you not care about? That's the whole point. It's how well am I moving through a problem? How well am I using the application? The whole experience part is actually the key. It's at the heart of it.
And I'll just add in terms of the heart, the hard part of it, what we're doing with Fluent Design is we're working really hard to make it systematic and build it into the platform and the controls and everything that you use so that just using the platform, just using the standard controls to build your apps, you get a lot of this benefit for free. And so it's really just build a UWP app or use the Fluent Design System to build your app, and you get this.
Yeah, so I totally hear the question and the
it makes sense.
It's I like when it's hard and it takes a lot of effort.
Right.
That technical debt gets harder and harder to trade off, and I think it's up to us as the system, the platform, to make it easy so that good design is just an outcome of making your experience.
So I think a good follow-up question then is, if I'm building a UWP application, how much of this good design will automatically transfer to what I'm doing? Because I know that there's work that I need to do because I need to know what my users are doing. I need to optimize for them. But is the OS going to give me some stuff too?
Key. Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of stuff will be built right into the common controls that you use every day.
Okay.
And there's a whole new set of controls that are coming out as part of this update, like the navigation view control. So very common thing people have is in the left side of their apps, they want a pane you can click to navigate on. And that's been a lot of work for people to build to the date. And with the new navigation view control, you get all that material, that light, all these kind of animations, this motion, all this stuff built in, the adaptive design, all these fundamentals covered for you. And so just using controls like the navigation view, you get a lot of this just for free. And it's actually easier for you as a developer than how it used to be to have to even build that UI.
Got it.
And even the consideration that it has to kind of span across these different screens and form factors.
Right.
Looking to build that in so it's adaptive, it's responsive, it's intelligent effectively. So we're doing the heavy lifting. That's the whole point.
Awesome. So let's get into the 5 principles. That way people can get a sense for what they are and why they're important. The first one I believe was light.
Light, yeah.
What do you mean by that?
I think light. Let there be light. I feel like in some ways, we've been designing in the dark, like where light is such a natural form.
Sure.
It gives life to a lot of design, and I don't care if you're into painting or art, but we live in light, and we've been thinking a lot more about how do we use light naturally in our design system, and I think we got some great examples.
Yeah, I would add that we're moving more and more to kind of temporal, ethereal experiences, things that kind of come and go, don't feel very rigid. Especially when you think about spatial design, like holographic and immersive space. So light is essential there. That's pretty much the quality that will bring that forth. And so using it as a connective tissue then across all the different devices and finding its purpose in those other places. We mentioned earlier when we were chatting that gaze is one of the key inputs when it comes to the immersive holographic space. You wouldn't know where you are unless you have that feedback. Light is essential. That's a way to know how to orient yourself.
And I'm just thinking of even in a flat thing, I've seen some really good this is the first time you're using the app. Let me show you how to use it.
Yeah.
They highlight light.
Highlight, right?
Start here and then we move here. I mean, that's just a really good example of subtle light usage.
Yeah.
Even in the headless devices, 0D, signal comes back through light. It's something that's going to tell me it's on. I'm listening. It's going to have, it definitely has a utility across the board.
Awesome. So light is the first thing. Then it was depth. Tell us, what does that mean? Because I'm looking at these principles. Obviously, I start out by thinking, what is this like in my screen? And then you always are like, yes, that's great, but then we take it to the next level. So what does it look like on my screen? And then what does that mean in sort of 3D experiences, 2D experiences?
Yeah, I'll start.
Sure.
But I think depth obviously is a very natural thing for all of us. We all live in a three-dimensional world, and we have a sense of depth and things that are farther from us and closer to us. And that translates certainly in a mixed reality world with things like HoloLens or the mixed reality immersive headsets that were talked about yesterday. But even on a 2D screen in a Surface Hub or Surface Studio, you can imagine leveraging that natural understanding that we have of depth in a way that helps make experiences that draw you in, make you feel more situated, and give you context about what you're working on in the app. Yeah. And so
I mean, it adds an additional axis. We have two. This is a third one that's like 50% increase in opportunity. So, to establish depth and have relationships, between things suddenly take a whole different, path. Context, implying certain things that you couldn't do unless you're using this kind of a z-axis, definitely a helpful thing.
And developers actually already do that today, because for sophisticated apps and experiences, you already have so much stuff often on the screen that you are like layering windows on top of each other. Right. And it's almost a disconnect that we don't recognize the natural depth that already exists. It already kind of exists. People are already trying to make use of it, and the system doesn't really support that. And so it's actually almost like a recognition of, hey, there actually is this fundamental depth that we should be making use of and bringing to light.
That's a really good point. It's actually now going with that. Like how far can we take it for it to be a useful thing? Yeah.
Remember how we talked about like shining a light on something you want to imagine, just having something just zoom in a little bit. I mean, that's it, and I love that these things are literally like, this is what I would think about. Like, if something is shined a light on, I'm going to go look at it, right? Let's do that in a program. If something is getting bigger, I'm going to look at it. Yeah. So let's do that in a program, right?
And I think it doesn't necessarily be like, hey, we're going to make everything 3D. And even in a 2D environment, you could do subtle things that makes it more delightful and more usable. Just a zoom. And we've been doing a lot of that thinking and building that into the system.
I'll add also spatial sound. It's an interesting part of the depth. We always focus on the visual, but there's also this audio that I think has opportunities we hadn't explored yet. I think that's also part of that.
That's a good. Let's get into motion, material, and scale, because there's tons of questions and I want to get into the motion. Who wants to speak to that?
Want to go for first?
Motion is what honestly makes us feel great when there is motion. It just brings everything to life. It's the dynamic quality. It also implies relationships and context. As you move from one thing to another, it kind of allows that story to follow you. I think those are the kind of a strongest points when it comes to motion.
Yeah, there's some great support for connected animations that we've built in that I think really contextualize your UI as you navigate through apps in a really just refreshing way, and something that's just, once you start experiencing it that way, when you go back to the way old UIs would work before that, it just feels like you've jumped back to some old generation, like black and white television.
It's like when we were looking at the Windows 3.11 stuff, we're like, oh, I remember that.
Once you really start using connected animations and motion, it's just old experiences just feel out of date.
It just feels right.
Cool. Let's talk about material.
The materiality in terms of, there's texture, how it feels, to how the light actually reflects off it, to the sense of materiality and that there's a density. Like we're trying to bring more of that natural environment into our design system and make it easier for developers, creators to bring that real world context so that users feel more comfortable, more drawn in. Like I literally want to touch it.
So when we're talking about material, is that the same as skeuomorphism?
Not necessarily. I think that's skeuomorphism, and I was, working on Metro was this trying to use real world analogy. Like, hey, let's just put a full material on it.
Right.
We're actually trying to use the material properties, the real material properties that interact. So, like acrylic material, it's not just hey. Some full material.
Let's look PNG over.
Right. It's actually interacting with the environment, the lighting. It's actually,
I don't think it's about, skeuomorphism is kind of an appropriation of concepts of the real world. Like, oh, it's a desktop and we're making it look like an old leather desktop or something. And that's not what we're doing, but we want to leverage the material properties that people understand about the world in an authentically digital way. And so in the real world, we don't have sheets of acrylic flying around in front of us. It's not a skeuomorphic concept, but it's about leveraging that fundamental understanding we have of how light and materials work to enhance the experience and make it more intuitive for users and more efficient to use and delightful.
So it's not like appropriating real life. Right. It's like taking the digital and making the materiality of that become real.
And mixing it. We talk about mixed reality, and it's kind of mixing reality and digital.
Got it. And the last one, obviously, is scale. My confusion is, what's the difference between depth and scale? Help me out.
I'll cover that. So on the scale side, we're simply saying we are living in this ecosystem of devices and input and output types that are vastly broader than where we started out. So we have to know how to scale across them. How do we bring these experiences, like we talked moments ago, to be adaptive and responsive and smart as they move across?
So this is awesome. So now we've gone through all 5 principles. Let's just get into the questions, and so we can see if we can answer as many as we can. You mentioned other materials than acrylic in your talk. What might those be?
Well, so I'll do a little tech push, which is just like there's actually a talk that Kelly and Lindsay just gave, or in the middle of giving right now. Well, it'll actually show you how you can edit and create your own materials using the platform. And so there's one that we're kind of standardizing on, providing as a design system level with acrylic, but there's a lot of flexibility and power with the composition system to do really incredible things, and you can explore that and define your own materials too.
Love it.
Yeah,
Love
and
it.
we're thinking more of as a palette that we want to establish of different materiality, and start getting your feedback. Hey, what more do you want to see?
Right.
And experiment and learn and adapt.
Yeah. Should we have gold?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it feels like there's a lot that you can do, and we're definitely going to get that talk online so people want to watch it. Will this new Fluent design require more powerful graphics card, or will it run on most laptops and cheap computers just fine?
Good question. That's been a key part of how we've been establishing Fluent, that it's a system, so it adapts and understands what device you're on. Maybe you talk more about how...
yeah, I mean, one of the things I'll say is that it's a really optimized pipeline that's being built around composition for this. It's very scalable. And so we're finding actually significant battery life and other improvements from shifting. Some UIs people had been doing special effects in other building their own blurs and stuff. When they shift over to our stack of doing it, they're getting tremendous battery life savings from that. And we've built in power policies and things into all the different materials and stuff so that it'll gracefully scale in a lovely way if you're on a lower power or higher power system. But
it feels
you'll
like
find this is very broadly applicable what we're doing.
Got it. And it feels like that this is now more closely married to the operating system.
Oh, yeah, totally.
So you get some of the benefit of not having to do a lot of the extra work that maybe is happening on the kernel side.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Next question. Fluent Design, when Windows insiders make Fluent Design more fluent and smooth, I think he means, when is Fluent going to be visible in the insider builds?
Well, it's in the builds now. We've been fortunate working with the Windows Next team, and like the Photos app, the Map app, the People app. I think you're
some of even the UWPs in Office are starting to employ these. So yeah, they're already there.
Yeah, yesterday we showed OneNote using Fluent Design and the Mail and Calendar app. And so those will be coming, shortly.
And also, this speaks to why the Insider is such an important group. We're not trying to design this monolithic, like, hey, here's the design, and we ship it, and we're done.
Right.
We want to work with Insider. We want to get your feedback, and we want to try new things, and we're going to try new things out. Some will work great, some might not, and that's what we want to learn. We want to really engage and shift and come with different waves of Fluent Design. So
I love it. Next question. Will Fluent Design make an appearance in a lighter form maybe on regular old desktop applications?
Regular old desktop.
So if I have a regular old, say someone made something in WinForms a long time ago, will it just start showing up in a new way?
As parts of the shell environment and system themselves update, I think, you'll see apps fitting in that world. But we've generally learned over the years that it's not a good idea to go muck with people's UI inside their apps because they've made assumptions about it. And so we really, it's a partnership with apps for them we make it very easy, but apps have to do a little work to update to the latest stuff.
Awesome. This is a really good question. Should I as a web developer care about Fluent? Is this relevant for websites too? I think so.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like it feels like these principles are, the way you've outlined them, like I could look at this and see like how I could make a product, like something that I hold, right? This could be something that you talk about for something that you wear. I mean, these principles are not computer focused only, right?
And if you look at the thinking around 0D to 2D to 3D, it's totally applicable to web, where the web, like if you go to all holographic experiences, immersive experiences, the web is in some ways even more relevant.
Yeah, and Edge, the Edge browser is going to be a great Fluent app, and that'll be the environment in which your website runs. It's the only web browser, to my knowledge, that works in a VR and mixed reality environment. It's the first in the world to do that. And so, if you think about bringing your website to mixed reality and VR, for example, with Edge, that's a great way to do that. And that environment that your page will be running in, as well as some elements that browser, user agents draw some elements for you, like scroll bars and buttons and things, and those things will also embody Fluent design.
I mean, the ambition is definitely to make it comprehensive across platform types, so web is part of that.
Stephen, could you talk a bit about as to how much a Fluent design system requires changes to or intertwines with the underlying Windows 10 OS? Like, this is an OS thing? You've spoken to that a little bit.
I guess one thing I'll say is it's a very layered approach that we're taking as a technology. Sometimes in the past, we've just kind of thrown something on as like a reskinning of the top-level shell, but that's not what we're doing with Fluent Design. We're fundamentally building it up and down the whole tech stack, the input layer, the composition layer, the UI framework, the platform that then the shell and the apps themselves build on, all the way up through the final experience you get. And so at every layer of the operating system, there are investments going on and the right level of capabilities and things being exposed to developers and users.
You wanted to say something?
Oh, and we also invest in a lot in terms of the tools.
Oh, yeah.
So that it's not like, hey, how do I design with Fluent? There's actually, we're working with Adobe XD. Actually, they're here in the hub doing demos.
And documentation. Our documentation up in the dev center being all updated.
So this is awesome. So because we only have about 90 seconds left, would you please speak a little bit as to where I can go to start looking at these things, feeling these things, understanding these things, and incorporating them as a developer? Why don't we start with you?
It's like, well, we can look at the existing apps within our Windows family and Office family. That's one place. And then also stuff we just mentioned. We have a microsite we launched.
Yeah, fluent.microsoft.com.
That's right.
Which also leads you to our dev portal, dev center, developer.microsoft.com.
Yeah, design.windows.com also has dev guidance and dev docs.
Yeah, we have a LinkedIn group. We're going to continue the conversation. We want to get your feedback, things that you're learning. But more importantly, I think, Channel 9, we got some amazing sessions that Bo and Paul did, along with a lot of design activities. That's
awesome. So all I know is I'm going to come and bother you folks a lot more because I want to be better at this. Thanks for watching. We've got a session coming up about right now.